My name is Gerry Henry. I live in Morristown, New Jersey. I have a daughter who lives in Tuskegee, Alabama. And I was visiting, and I'm an artist also. I did graphic arts as a career, but I'm also a portrait painter. And I came down to Alabama to visit my daughter one summer, and she introduced me to a woman named Gloria Peoples. This woman had lost her son in a violent incident. It resonated with me because I also lost my son, but it was for medical reasons and not particularly violent. However, I understood her grief and she spoke to me, and I felt we were really bonded. She was telling me about her son and what happened. And in talking, I was thinking about my own situation. And even though I had never met Gloria before, I felt like we knew each other. She was a mother who was grieving for her son, as I was. Anyway, so we get to talking a little bit more, and I told her, give me a picture of your son and I'll do a portrait for you. So I got the picture and I worked on the portrait for a long time. And when I finally got it done, I was able to go down to Tuskegee, Alabama to visit my daughter and her family. And I took the portrait with me and it was already finished. Gloria didn't know that it was coming. And so they invited Gloria to their house. I put the portrait up on an easel and waited for her to come in. When Gloria walked in and saw the portrait, she and I just, we became one person. It was the most moving experience of my life. And I'll say to any other artist who does this, you will never feel so fulfilled because you have this special gift and you cannot give a grieving mother anything better than a portrait, an oil portrait, or any kind of portrait. A portrait is different than a photograph. It has a lot more meaning to it. And as far as painting it went, I painted this young man's face. And as I was studying his face, I felt like I got to know him. That's the way it is when you're painting portraits. And I worked on it a long time. I wanted to get a good likeness, and I think I did. And when you finally finish the portrait and you put the final glisten in the subject's eyes, the portrait comes to life. It's like this person is alive again. So I had the portrait ready. Gloria walked in to the room. She didn't see the portrait right away and pointed it out to her. And she looked at it. It was so emotional. The two of us fell into each other's arms and we became sisters at that very moment. And if you artists want to do something for a mother that nobody else can do using your very special talent, this is your chance to do it. And you're doing something very significant. Losing a child is bad enough, but in a violent way is even worse. So if you're a human being and you want to reach out to another person and you have this very special skill, if you're well advised to do it, you will be richly rewarded. And I just can't, I just hope that you get a good response because there's a lot of hurting people out there. And there's just too much violence in the world. Even though we can't stop it individually, one step at a time. And everything that you do to help ripples out, and other people will start to do it too. So it's a very worthwhile project, and I think you'll be very glad that you did it. And just so you know what it was I did, here's a portrait of me that I painted.
Would you characterize your experience as a spiritual experience?
I suppose I could characterize it as a spiritual experience, uh, but it did something for me that I never thought would happen. I mean, I've lived my life. I'm in my 80s right now. I was younger then, but I tried to live a decent life and I tried to do what I could to make a difference. And this exercise in helping a human being in such a way that most people can't. And that's why you artists, I'm saying to you, you have a special gift and you will feel so wonderful once you've done it. I would recommend that you to make somebody feel like their child is back with them, which is what happened when you do this kind of thing.
We were pointing out in a letter to some of the administrators that were asking for help that the fine art that we're giving people,
Yes.
that the artists are providing for people, may well be the only and first, or first and only piece of fine art
Yeah, well,
that they have in their home.
that's right.
And we're hoping to spur
Yes.
something of a renaissance.
Okay.
And so Erica and I and C, we really want to thank you from the depths of our heart for what you contributed, the way that you helped and healed these families. And you were our inspiration for a very, very, very singular kind of movement against murder and violence. We've had great response. I want to ask you if you would also share your experience with Miss Roberta Crenshaw.
I met Roberta Crenshaw at one of my visits to my daughter at Tuskegee, and she's a very impressive woman. And what she was doing when I got down there was to help children with their homework after school. And she seemed to be a teacher, and she loved what she was doing. And I said, and she was old enough to be retired at the time. And I said to myself, what a wonderful way to spend your time, helping kids. What could be better? Anyway, we got to know each other, and she found out about this portrait that I had done, and she told me her sad story. Not one, but two of her children were murdered, and she had one left and a grandchild. So that was really traumatic. So I could not say no to that. And so I took that on, and I did like a triple portrait for her. And the thing is, when you do these things, the people that you give it to, it's such a great gift that they just can't thank you enough. And you feel so fulfilled for having done it. And you want to do your best when you do these portraits and give them something of value. And most people don't have oil paintings in their homes. Ordinary people don't have that. So that's another aspect of this. And as a fine artist, you're contributing more than just the portrait, an introduction into the world of art also. And if children see what you've done and if they have artistic proclivities, they might decide, well, I could do this too. So it has a lot of benefits all the way around. But basically, it's a heart to heart endeavor. I did not start this. It's been going on all over the country. Other portrait artists are doing the same thing. But to help people get over the trauma of having their children violently murdered is a great as great a gift as anybody can give another human being. And I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor. And you'll put your whole heart and soul into it, and you will feel so gratified once you get done, and you'll have the gratitude of the people and subjects for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I have to say, it really affected me very deeply. And woman to woman, mother to mother, grandmother to grandmother, you're bonded no matter who you are. It's a wonderful thing.
Now, with Miss Crenshaw, there was no picture. She lost her 2-year-old,
Yes.
and there was no picture of her 2-year-old. How did you?
Well, with Mrs. Crenshaw, when I did her portraits, one was a very little boy and the other was a grown man. The little boy, they didn't have a picture of even, but it turns out that her grandson looked almost exactly alike. And I used the grandson's photo to do the boy's portrait. And Roberta reported to me it did look just like her son. And it was the only record she had of him, as far as an image went. So that was a challenge.
Yeah. And it's actually the only family portrait she has of her 3 sons, and she could not have had it without the help of an artist. That's right.
Well, that's why you're an artist, because you can transform your oil paints into an image, into an idea. It's a wonderful gift that you have. So use it for a good cause. And this is one of the best ones. You'll never regret it.
So where did you hone your craft? Where did you cultivate your gift at?
Well, when I was a little girl, I liked, drawing and that kind of thing. And I grew up in New York, which, in my opinion, if you're growing up poor, New York is the place to be because there's so many opportunities there. For example, I went to the Brooklyn Museum, had classes for young kids, and I went there on the weekends. My parents really helped along with that. But when I got to high school, when I got to high school, instead of going to the local neighborhood school, there was in New York, like I said, they had these specialty schools, and the one I went to was called the High School of Industrial Arts, and it was designed to train commercial artists. And since I was doing artwork, and I I decided to try out for that place, and I had a portfolio and I presented it, and I got into the school. Now we had famous illustrators teaching us there, but also the academic teachers were excellent. So I really got a first class education for free in New York, and this was in the early 50s. It's not like today. The nice thing about my school experience was that most of us were working class children, and we came from the five boroughs of New York. So, every type of person was there. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it wasn't like that throughout the whole country. It was just New York like this. We went to school with everybody. It wasn't separated or segregated. And so we got to know each other one on one. So it was a wonderful experience. And it's one of the things that formed me also. And I'm happy about that. And I highly recommend it. I don't live there anymore. I'm too old for it, but I'm glad that I did. Yes. So it's a wonderful gift. And if you can actually do something worthwhile with it, you really should, if you have the interest to do it. And you will be a much better person for it. You will feel very good about yourself, having made another mother in particular happy. And in Roberta's case, she didn't have any portraits of her. Those two were killed in such a horrific way. So my hat is off there. She's a very strong woman, and I was really happy to be associated with her. And humbled, just being able to do something for her. She's done so much for so many other people.
Would you share? Now, you came down in 2019 to Tuskegee, and you were there for our grand planting,
Yeah.
and you were very helpful and very involved. And can you share your reflections about that?
Well, that was a very moving event, and I thought it was planned very well. I mean, the idea of planting fruit trees for these children and for their parents to be able to come and take the fruit from the trees when it was available is very symbolic and a beautiful thing. And then I got to meet a lot of those parents who had lost their children again. And the issue of violence in the neighborhood is really important, and there has to be a way around it. There's violence all over. There's violence with the police and other kinds of violence, but the violence in the neighborhood too. It shouldn't happen, and people who are trying to make it stop really need your help. And I hope that you'll see that and then go ahead and do these portraits and and fight for justice and make sure that children don't have to go through this and mothers don't lose their sons or daughters to violence that shouldn't have happened ever. So that's my plea. Do your best and you will be very happy that you did.
Okay. Now, would you care to share anything else? Anything at all?
Should I brag about my grandkids?
Sure. I mean, only because they belong to your favorite son-in-law.
Oh, really?
Yes. But yeah, I mean, we have a little camera space and the camera's rolling. Anything you'd like to say relative to the project or anything else?
Well, I mean, I hate to brag, but my grandchildren, I know you don't expect this, but they're absolutely special. They're brilliant and they're sweet and they're smart and they learn quickly and I just adore them. I don't know what else I can say about them. And my daughter, I'm happy to say, is engaged in worthwhile work because she was trained to do that and brought up that way. And and the kids are just too cute for words. Is all I can say about them.
When Erica was growing up, did you ever picture her doing something like this?
Absolutely. I told both of my kids, I said, when you go to school and you're learning stuff, think outside the box. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Figure things out for yourself. Do not be a sheep. And that was my philosophy for them. And Erica is a good example of that.
Mhm.
You can function a lot better in the world if you don't have to depend on what somebody else says.
Mhm.
We have to analyze things. And I think the school system would be well advised to encourage that kind of thinking, independent thinking amongst young people. And they're bombarded with all kinds of information and misinformation, and all kinds of, terrible things. And we have to make decisions. I can remember, well, when I was coming of age, and I left home and I had to, take care of myself, and I went to school and I had a part-time job. I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I do now? I don't know how to do anything. Should I spend the little bit of money I have on a dress, or should I pay the rent? What should I do? You have to make these decisions that you didn't have to do before. So if you had experience beforehand of analyzing everything, and I said to myself, well, I can't wear a dress if I have no place to live, so that came into play. What is your common sense? Common sense can't be bought; it has to be born with it. And don't let anybody ever put you down. And don't be afraid, above all, to make a mistake. And this is what people do. A lot of people are stymied because they're so petrified of not doing something exactly right. If you don't make a mistake, you won't learn anything. The man who didn't make a mistake never made anything. And that's my credo. I think you have choices in this world, and that's one of them. You don't have to take anybody's word for anything, but do your research, scientific about it. Keep learning. Learning is fun. If you teach your kids that learning is fun, you don't have to really do anything because they'll do it on their own. And you teach them values. You teach them to use their brains. You got it made. As a parent, your job is done. And that goes for other people's children too. As a grandmother, I can say that freely.
Now, one more thing, we
Yes.
can't leave this out. You recently jumped the broom. You stomped the
Let me
glass.
stop the glass.
You got married.
I'm 82 years old. My husband is 85, and we just got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's a long story in itself. Well, what happened was I had been married for 60 years to Erica and my son Carl's father. He died a couple years ago, and I had been taking care of him. He had Alzheimer's for the last 10 years or so of his life. And so once he passed, I said to myself, wow, you were married for 60 years and now you're single. What do you do next? And I said, well, you're 80 years old, so forget about anything. So we went on about our lives, and I was doing great. We were having a good time. I took my two daughters over to Amsterdam for a week, and we had a good time. And then after that, a very good friend of mine invited me to this beach house on Long Beach Island, which was a co-op. It had two sides to the building. And so she invited me and several other women of a certain age, me being the oldest, and we had the best time. Meanwhile, at the other part of the house was another family. And they used to come all the time. So I met this young woman who was the daughter, and fell in love with her right away. She just was a wonderful person. We had a great conversation. And then I met the granddaughter, who also was wonderful. I was really impressed with them all. And then, last but not least, I met Charlie. Now, Charlie is a Quaker, and it's important to me because I worked for Quakers for 42 years, the American Friends Service Committee. So we had a little conversation, and I found out that he had been married for 60 years also, and his wife died almost exactly a month after my husband did. So we had that in common right away. I didn't think anything of it, just a nice person to talk to. And the next night, he invites us to his side of the house for ice cream. He says, you should come over. It's going to melt anyway. I said, well, okay. So we all went over there for ice cream. We had a little visit, and I thought nothing of it. And the next day, we were getting ready to leave, and I went out to the car to put my stuff away. And when I came back, there's Charlie. He's sitting on our side of the house with my lady friends surrounding him. And when I walk in, he hands me a card with his information on it. And he said, would you like to go to the art museum with me? Well, could have knocked me over with a feather. I was dumbfounded and I couldn't speak, which it never happens to me any other time. So I took him up on it because I was too embarrassed to say no. And we did. We went on a date. I mean, I've been married 60 years. You don't think about dates. So I thought we were going to look at pictures at the museum. Instead, we stayed at the cafeteria they had, and we talked for a couple of hours. And then we went and we walked and we talked a little bit more. And then we decided to see each other again the next couple of weeks. And it turns out the neighborhood that I settled in when I first got married It's called Falcon Village in Philadelphia. Turns out he and his wife, they got married before we did. They're older. Settled in that same neighborhood. That's where he met his wife. And half a block from where I settled. There were so many path crossings. Like his last name is Phillips. My dad's name was Philip.
Mhm.
And we went to peace marches together, and we had, just the same values and all of that. Like I said, I really didn't know it mattered. And I'm thinking, well, I'm talking to myself, and I said, well, so supposing he's the grandson of Jack the Ripper, you don't know anything about him. And I said, well, let me find out. So as we kept talking, it turns out he was about one of the sweetest people I ever met. And so one of our early conversations, he says to me, what are you looking for in a man? I said, I'm not looking. And then I thought for a minute of all the men that I love and admire, and top of the list is my father. My father was a sweet, kind, and gentle man, and my son also the same. And so I told him what I would be looking for had I been looking. Anyway, we went from there, and we have, we went different places. We went to Palpin on a tour, and that was very nice and all. And then finally, I came out to this house here in East Plain, and we got to know each other better and better. And the more I met, the better I liked him, because I mean, without bragging, he's one of the kindest, sweetest, and most honest men I've ever met. And just to describe him, we talk about everything, and especially the condition of the world and stuffing. What could fix the world? And he says to me, we need more loving kindness. Now, that tells you who Charlie Phillips is. He's just a wonderful, wonderful man, and I still can't believe my mother. I mean, after 2 years, we decided it was time. We were getting along so well. The pandemic worked out great for us because we just wanted to be together anyway.
Mm.
So finally, we made the decision, and here's my ring, and he's wearing one too. And I said, I can't believe I'm married again.
Amen.
So that's my story up until this day.
Excellent. And Erica, do you have anything you want to ask or say?
All right. It's good to have you on camera. You look beautiful. I'm not sure if they asked already, but can you talk about when you began getting interested in art?
Oh, when I was a little girl, I always liked to draw, but it was a given. And then also in New York, there's a school called Pratt Institute. They teach art in different formats, architecture, that kind of thing. So I would go there also for museum and that. So I get a little bit of art instruction outside, but I always enjoyed it.
So, can you talk about your high school?
Yeah, well, I mentioned it before. It was now it's called the High School of Art and Design, but at that time it was the High School of Industrial Arts. And a lot of the teachers that worked there, it was like it was after the Second World War, and this program was for working class kids, sort of like a community college, to get a career in the art field. They taught architecture, signing show card, illustration, and things like that. And they had professional teachers, and like I said, the student body they were ordinary kids from all the 5 boroughs, all talented one way or the other. And so we were like set apart from the general population, and most of them did extremely well in a lot of ways. So I was very lucky to go there. And as an addendum to that, after I finished high school, I got a scholarship to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And they also had a coordinator program at the University of Pennsylvania so that you could get a degree that way. Anyway, so when I started at the U of P, I went in the evening school, and I was really intimidated by all these rich kids, with all kinds of privileges and whatnot. And I was kind of nervous about it. But when we came down to the work, I could compete with any of them, and that really built up my confidence, which is a good lesson for young people.
Mhm.
So that really helped me out too. And then at that time, well, I met my first husband there, and that's a funny story too. When in high school, we had a wonderful history teacher, really changed my life, and she made me a history buff from that day to this. And so I've been reading the New York Times ever since. So when I was at the academy there, I see this young man. He's reading the New York Times, and I walk up, innocently and as arrogant as a New Yorker could be. And I said, "Oh, are you from New York?" And the rest is history. We went from there and we got married. We had 2 kids. We lived a very interesting life all together. And it's all good. Life is what you make it. That's my advice to young people. And the nice thing about getting this old is you can give your opinion all the time. Free of charge.
Let me ask you this. So, for the last many years, they've been cutting art education programs in the school.
Yeah.
What would you say is the detrimental effect of getting rid of those art programs?
Well, there's a dimension to art, that's different than academics. And if a child has the proclivity to do it, you don't want to deprive them of that. And the other thing is, nowadays, as opposed to when I was growing up, there's a lot more opportunities for artists of all kinds. Now, the digital age happened in the 80s, mid 80s. Fortunately for me, I did not worry about making mistakes. And I made every one possible. But I learned how to use computer software, to do the things that we used to do by hand. So that was a real plus. And most people my age, I know a lot of very good graphic designers, but they just couldn't understand it. They were so intimidated by the digital aspect of it. They just went into other fields. But the younger people, and there was no, I mean, at that time, it wasn't even being taught in schools, it was so brand new. Well, luckily where I worked, they had a whole department of techies who were very kind to me. And when I asked them dumb questions like, "What do you need a computer for?" they would explain it to me. I said, "I don't need it for recipes. What's the point?" Then I became a computer junkie also. And now, luckily for me, I have a granddaughter who lives with me and helps me out with all things digital. Otherwise, it'd be sunk. I'm sure other adults have the same experience. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Would you have any words of advice to our artists who are doing portraits?
Well, she gets a lot of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, I would say, keep painting, and it's really easy to get sidetracked when you have a life besides being an artist. And you have to really fight with yourself and make time. And I should take my own advice and keep painting. The more you paint, the better you get. And that's all there is to it. But it's very, very rewarding, and it's not something everybody can do. So you can really learn and enjoy the art. And it's a shame to take art out of school. It's a big dimension that kids will be missing. And if they're not exposed, they won't even know that they can do it. If they never try it. So, keep on. It's wonderful. There's many outlets for it. Costume design, illustration, kind of other things. Publication design. That's what I did. And in the digital age, it was really fun for me because email, that was brand new. And at that time, the organization I worked for had branches all over the world, and so I could help people with their publications just by using my computer. That was unheard of before. Well, in fact, I tell the young kids, who are maybe 13 or so, or 14, when I was your age, the next big thing was a ballpoint pen. Now look how far we've come. So just keep on learning. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You'll only get better if you keep trying. And that applies to just about everything else, but particularly for art. So I feel very fortunate, that kind of life that I have. But a lot of your life is what you make it. I have to tell people, don't get stymied, with self-doubt. Just branch out and try stuff. Make the mistakes. That's how you learn. You never learn anything if you don't try it.
So do you have any advice for your grandchildren, future great grandchildren?
Yes. Like I said, my grandchildren, all of them are very exceptional. And I tell them the same thing, and my daughter is a prime example. Think outside the box, don't take anybody's word for anything. Try to find out information on your own and stay interested. The world is a fascinating place. The more you know, the better off you are. And now with the digital age, it's so much easier. You can find out anything in Google. I always say I'm a graduate from Google University. Yeah, so young people born in this era have a lot more going for them than we ever did. But on the other hand, we can appreciate things a lot more if we know what we're going for. So just take the high road and you'll never get lost. That's my advice.
Do you want to interview Charlie a little bit? He doesn't have
Not
to be for the
yet.
project.
Right, okay, yes,
Just for
definitely.
like historic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he would be it for it, but just be something to preserve his words and who he is.
Well, what do you want to know? Because I mean, his career was totally different. Mine.
Mhm. What it was and who he is a little bit.
You can ask him. I'm right there.
They're out walking ginger right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
They're walking ginger.
Uh,
I think there is like every breed of mosquito there
It
ever
is.
was.
oh, you
It
tell
is.
when I
Yeah.
go in the
Actually,
yard.
Ginger and the children will probably walk with Charlie.
This,
I think I hear him now.
Mhm.
Charlie is so funny. He walks the dog, and the dog decides she wants to go this way and he wants to go that way. So they're standing in the middle of the street, and Charlie is explaining in great detail why the dog should follow him this way. And I said, Charlie.